Welcome to A Kid's Life podcast. I'm Angela Lockwood, and for the last 20 years, I have been working in schools, supporting teachers to build inclusive classrooms. Through A Kid's Life podcast, my goal is to help us adults better understand the complexities of life as a kid. My guests and I share stories, reflections, and simple strategies to support kids of all needs as they walk through life. So whether you're looking for inspiration, direction, guidance, tips, or just a laugh, A Kid's Life podcast is the place for you. Enjoy. Welcome to A Kid's Life podcast. I'm Angela Lockwood, and in this episode today, I want to talk to you guys about something that kept coming up for me in many conversations just recently over the school holidays. But before I get into it, congratulations. Well done on making it through the school holidays. Now, for me, I absolutely love being able to spend time with my kids over the holidays, but I do find it a little bit of a juggle. And I talked about this in the previous episode about how to make the most of school holidays. And I'm hoping at the other side of the school holidays, you have all been able to find some downtime, just sort of reset, reignite some of the fun back in your family without having to drag yourself through the day all the time, because really that's what school holidays are all about. So I am breathing a little bit calmly today. I have to admit, the kids being back at school. But one of the things that I was reflecting on coming back into sort of work in the way that I work, which is, not the 9 to 5, but I do work very differently. And one of the things I was looking back on is what were some of the conversations I had with parents over the school holidays, and what were some of the themes that came through? What was a lot of the questions that I was getting as well? Because being somebody who works with parents all the time, the questions that parents will ask me will often be able to be content that I can give you value through, and also through my online parent membership, Calm Confident Kids. I have a whole range of information on there for parents. And of course, this comes from the demand from you as parents. What are the things that you're wanting to have help with? What are the things that worry you? What are the things that you're seeing you're having difficulties with as being a parent to help your kids navigate? And that's what the Kids Life podcast is all about. And that is what Calm Confidence Kids is all about as well. And the biggest question on looking back over the holidays through conversations, through my work, but also just through friends, was how frustrating it is with kids being on devices all the time. Now, I'm definitely not pointing the finger here, because there were so many moments over these recent holidays where I would come in from outside, the day was so beautiful, and it was be one of those days where as a kid, I would have been playing outside. I would have been riding my bike around. I would have been hanging out with friends. I would have been doing really, fun things that we realize kids do. But instead, what I found sometimes was I would walk in and my kids were sitting on the lounges, scrolling through their devices. Now, there were times where was so cranky about this. It would frustrate me to the point where I could feel that tightness in my chest coming up. That sense that you get when you're so cranky that your body actually responds. And for me, on beautiful sunny days, when I would walk in and see my kids, what I would see is wasting it, sitting on devices, scrolling through YouTube videos. Well, that would give me that actual physiological response of stress. And at times I wasn't at my best, and I would get cross and I would get frustrated. My frustration would come through the way that I was talking to them, or it would come through by me needing to walk out, because I knew that if I was to tell them or say to them exactly what was on my mind, that the situation might boil over into a situation I didn't want it to happen. But then I would realize that this is the reality for kids now. The reality for a lot of kids is, actually, let's face it, it's most kids, all kids, is that devices have become a part of our reality. They are our life. And I better just touch base with you for a minute. So when I talk about devices, What I'm talking about is things like iPads, phones, the television, computers, gaming devices like Xbox and, whatever else that they can cleverly connect to the internet through. So all of these devices is what I'm talking about. And so it's not just sitting on a phone or just sitting on an iPad. It's the whole kit and caboodle of technology of how they can connect to the internet. And some of it, of course, when they do this is through YouTube and watching YouTube videos. Other times it's through social media, depending on the age of your child. Sometimes it is scrolling through things like Pinterest for creative inspiration, as my daughter tells me, or it could be a whole range of things. They could be just sitting watching TV. All of this device time is what I'm talking about. But what was interesting, I found, and of course, this is an area of really strong interest of mine, particularly having written a book about 5 years ago now called Switch Off: How to Find Calm in a Noisy World. And devices are just a part of what I talk about with switching off. But switching off is really about how we find those calm moments in our lives when things can get pretty noisy. Now, what we're finding for kids is that devices, because they are such a part of their life, that it can feel like that is their switching off time. That's their chilling out time. And before we sort of go, oh, these kids on devices, I really feel it's necessary for us to shine the light on us as adults. Now, it's not guilty. I'm not guilting anybody here, but we often project our frustration to our kids around how they use devices. But if we turn the spotlight on us for a little bit, what we realize is that our device habits, the way we use devices, also isn't serving us well. So when I'm talking about all this content around how do we build our trust with our kids and how do we build good device use habits, it sometimes can also be really helpful not to just focus on how we can help our kids, but also how we can maybe shape some of our habits so that they serve us well. Now, I recently interviewed Dr. Christy Goodwin. You might have already listened to that episode. If you didn't, please go back and check it out. It's on episode 38 of a Kids Life podcast. It's called Raising Kids in a Digital World. And this was a fantastic conversation I had with Dr. Christy around how we can raise kids in a world where they are constantly switched on through their devices, and what we can do as adults to better create some of those boundaries and create some of those good habits for our kids. And also, there's just so many resources out there. That was the other thing in looking back over a lot of these questions that I had from parents over the holidays and frustration sharing that we had around getting our kids off devices. I was really interested, and I thought, I wonder how much information is out there for us parents to support us, right? To help us understand what to do to help support our kids and build these positive habits around device use. Now, just to add to the overwhelm, when I put that into Google, how to build positive habits for kids around device use, what came up was 13.1 million results in 0.46 seconds. Now, that in itself absolutely blew my mind. And of course, the information is out there. We can Google, ironically, how can we build positive device habits for our kids? But what that does is it also can add to the overwhelm of, well, what do we do? Where do we start? So in this episode today, I just want to highlight 3 really simple but totally impactful things that you can do from your point of view to show your children that they can trust you with using devices and that you're in it with them, that you're working alongside them to try to navigate this whole new world of being on devices. Because we can look at time use and we can look at what they're doing and get caught up in all of that nitty gritty and all the detail. But what I see is if we don't do these 3 things first, the rest is just like adding band-aids over the top, or it's looking at things that we could get so overwhelmed with that if we miss these 3 really important foundations, then the rest of the stuff, it really is just detail and it adds to the complication. So let's jump straight into it. Okay, how can we help our kids build positive digital habits without being on their case all the time? Because that's the other thing. We don't want to be nagging our kids constantly, because what ends up happening, and we know this, when we nag and nag and nag, what happens is kids will switch off. They will switch off, not the device, they will switch off listening to you. So what we want to do is do really three really simple things so that we can build that trust with our kids. And when our kids trust us and know that we're with them and not to completely get them off devices, then what you'll find is there'll be an acceptance. There'll be better communication between you and your child about how to build these device habits that are positive for them. So let's have a look at what the three are. The first one is about realizing and accepting as adults that our kids are growing up in a very different world to when we were younger. It's a bit of a tricky realization, but if you think back to when you were a child and you were running around out in the playgrounds or out in the local community, even in your street, life was very different. And as much as we want our kids to grow up just like we did, the reality is that devices has added a different level, a different perspective on things for kids. They have access to things that we would never had access to. And as much as we fight it, we're going to come up with a lot of resistance from our kids. We're going to be coming up against a lot of resistance. And what we know is that if kids don't feel trusted and they're told no, they'll want it more. You know that if you know that you can't have something, you always want it more. So as adults, if we realize and accept that life is different for kids now, and how the devices sort of integrate into all of their lives. Now, let's just listen to this for a moment, because I was thinking of this when I again was reflecting on device use for kids and how they use it. I found myself during the holidays, I was out in the garden doing what we would love for our kids to be able to do, is be outside and enjoy the sun and be in nature. But while I was planting, I realized I walked inside to get my phone to be able to use an app to go back out to my garden to identify a bug that was eating my tomatoes. Now, of course, I could have gardened without a phone, but what it did is it enhanced my problem solving around finding out, well, how can I stop these bugs from killing my tomatoes? I used my device in a way that helped. Now, I didn't realize it at the time. It was until I looked back and went, okay, when was all the times that I used my phone where I could be getting frustrated with my kids if they used it in a similar sense, but I seemed to make it okay. Another time was, that we were receiving text messages around some of my two kids who were involved in sport. They have apps that were getting messages on how to be active over the holidays. And I found that quite ironic, because here they were having to check their phones to get ideas around how to be active and how to be playing their sport and working on their skills over the holidays. And then there were the times we went to the movies and we bought the tickets online. That was again through our devices, or we were messaging friends to organize catch-ups. Despite us wanting our kids to be off devices, well, let's face it, society has made us pretty much reliant on them. And it doesn't mean we throw up our hands and go, oh, what's the point then? Just let kids run wild with devices. It's not that. It's just giving ourselves that bit of breathing space, that life is different, that we have devices as an integral part of our lives, and it's about working with them. Now, I just started reading a brilliant book. I'm absolutely loving it. It's called Stolen Focus, Why We Can't Pay Attention. Fantastic book by Johann Hari. And it's shedding a light for me on how switched on as a society we really are, and how these structures have been set up in society so that we have a strong reliance on devices, and it's how it's impacting our attention. So if that's something that you would love, I'll include that link in the show notes if that's a book that you'd like to read. So realizing and accepting that life is different and devices are a part of all of our lives is the first way to start to build trust with your kids, that you understand these digital habits that they have. The second one is around leading by example. Now, no guilt being placed on anybody here, no finger pointing. The leading by example is a really important place to start, and to realize our own habits is so important in helping our kids see what it's like to have positive digital habits. Now, I often say this, you'll hear me say this many times, that our kids may not seem to be listening to us, but they are always watching us. And when it comes to our relationship with devices, you can be guaranteed that our kids are watching us. I've been witness many times, and I do have to say, in my household, this does happen, where we're frustrated by our kids being on their device, and we'll tell them, sometimes very firmly tell them, to turn off their devices. But we look down and we go back straight to our phones, and with our phones in our hands, and we keep going, reading off our device. Now, I see this also in parks. I see it in cafes where children are being told to play, just so that the parent can sit and scroll through their own social media, or look at things online. But for a child, they don't know what you're doing online. They don't know what app you're using. They're just seeing a device on your hand. And what happens is they get confused and they get conflicting messages from what they're seeing and what they're hearing. And when that happens, kids don't know what's going on. They go, well, you're telling me one thing, and you're telling me, but you're doing something completely different. And this, for kids, particularly younger kids, as they're learning the behaviors that work for them and that are good for them and that are healthy for them, they're watching you to see, are you doing the same thing? So take this as a very friendly reminder, just to give yourselves a little bit of an audit. Look at your own habits and think, am I coming home at night and sitting on the lounge and watching TV? Remember, that's a device. Am I taking my phone to bed with me? Am I watching on my iPad videos while I'm cooking? It's all these little things that we do, that we probably don't realize that we're doing, but our kids are always watching us. So showing them that actually we all keep our phones downstairs, or we all keep our phones in one central location in our house before we all go to bed. Because when we all do it, then that way it becomes a consistent behavior pattern in your home. So the first thing we were talking about was about realizing and accepting that things are different now. And the second thing was around leading by example to facilitate these positive digital habits. The third one, and this is one that I don't think we think about very often, it's about becoming educated alongside your child about the digital world. And what I mean by this is, we know probably for the first time in history, we now have 3-year-olds that probably know more about a subject than what we do as parents. How often do we go to our kids and say, hey, can you help me with this issue? Or why is my phone doing this? And our kids usually will know, or they can find out a way to know. They've just got this intuitive nature around technology because it's what they're growing up with. But just like any area of parenting that we have, like helping our kids make friends or being safe, even doing homework, what we eat, as parents, we really need to set and create boundaries. And these boundaries need to fit in with our value system based on what we know, what we believe, and what we learn. And device use should be no different. And a way that we can become upskilled, and the way that we can show our kids that we're working with them on this, we're not just telling them always to get off their devices or that go outside. It's not always about the control mechanism of telling them to get off all the time. When you sit alongside your child and you learn with them, what happens is our kids start to go, hang on a minute, mum and dad really want to know about this important part of my world. And what this does is it allows you to have really good conversations with them around the things that matter to them, the things that interest them online. Now, it might be things like, asking them what game are they playing, and to get them to teach you how to play that game. Now, I do have to admit that gets pretty frustrating for some kids. I know for me, I tried to get my son to show me some of the games that he was playing, and he got really frustrated because I just couldn't grasp it. But anyway, that's another point. At least I was interested. Another thing would be around, even taking them to a store, one of the tech stores, and going for a wander there through there with them, and get excited and ask them what are the new things that kids are wearing and watching, and what's the stuff that they're interested in. Have a play with some of the devices with them. And that's a way that trust and relationship with your child is built, because they see that you care, that you are there with them. It might also just be about sitting alongside them and asking them what they're watching. I have to admit, looking at some of the things that my kids watch online, or the kids that I work with online, it absolutely baffles me. I don't get half of it, but actually some of it is quite funny and interesting. So my daughter in particular, she loves when I can sit with her, even if it is for 10 minutes, and she'll show me this new video that one of the people that she follows, what she watches. And it's really interesting. Mark Rober is one of them. And I'll link to the show notes, in the show notes, to his YouTube video. It's all about science. And he was an ex-NASA engineer. Really cool stuff that I would never sit down and Google. But because I took the time to sit with my daughter and ask her what she's watching and what she's interested in, it's allowed me now to have conversations with her about things that she's interested in. And that's a really important way to build parent trust with their child. One more thing to think about when it this becoming educated with your child: don't be scared to ask them questions that you don't have the answer to. Now, what I mean by that is, we often get really worried that we don't want our kids to think we don't have all the answers. But when it comes to tech and device uses, man, I'm the first one to put my hand up to say, I don't understand a lot of it. But if I can show my child that I'm trying to learn, then what it does, it allows them to share that skill with you. And that's another beautiful way to build trust with your child, so that when you do have to have those difficult conversations with them about boundaries and how to use it, and about good manners on social media, and all these different things that we have to navigate now in an online world, having that trust with your child to have conversations, not always that have a negative slant on it, but ones where are fun and joyful and light, about gaming, and it might be about things of interest to them, then what it does is your child will be more open to talking to you and sharing their online world with them than if you don't show any interest. So the three things were definitely the foundations to start to build trust with your child around device use. And the first one was around realizing and accepting that things have changed and that devices are a part of our lives. The second thing is around leading by example through our own positive device use and our own positive digital habits. And the third one, which we don't often think about, is sitting alongside your child and become educated with them around all of their interests, all of the tech that's out there, so that you can have conversations that are positive, not just the ones around disciplining or the negative sides of device use, because there's so many great upsides to using devices. Now, if you want more information about more in-depth information or access to workshops, the e-Safety Commissioner website here in Australia is a fantastic website. And they have a whole lot of helpful ways that you can better support your child online. And they even have information on how to support kids that are under 5. So I will link that to the show notes under here. Now, just remember, we're all learning and navigating this online and device-driven world together. Okay, so parents and kids, we're all learning it as we go. So building a trusting relationship is the important first step, okay, to helping our kids develop positive digital habits. But just like any area of parenting, never forget that you're in the driver's seat. You're the one that makes the decisions, and building a trusting relationship with your child will ensure that you know when to step back and give them that little bit of freedom that they need. But it'll also allow you to know when it's time to step in and have those conversations that are absolutely vital to their development and safety. Now, this is an area where you don't need to have any more overwhelm added to it. If you are having difficulties in the area of navigating the online world with your child, then there are many professionals that can help you with this. But what I would suggest first is just touch in with these 3 things that we've talked about. Have a think about it. If you've got any questions, please reach out. And don't forget, I've got the parent membership, Calm Confident Kids, which digital habits is one of the areas that we uncover. And you can just go to angelalockwood.com.au, Calm Confident Kids, and you can have access to the parent membership on there. And we would love to have you there. We talk about a whole range of things that, topics that will help parents to better understand their kids. I hope you have enjoyed the podcast today, and this episode, I should say today. And just remember, we are all navigating this together. You are certainly not alone, but the fact that you've taken the time to listen to this episode around how you can build a trusting relationship with your kids shows that you are on the right path. Until then, stay safe and enjoy. Thank you for listening to A Kid's Life podcast. To stay up to date with all new episodes, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you want to know more about the Inclusive Classroom or any of the other programs I provide, please go to angelalockwood.com.au. And until next time, slow down, have fun, and enjoy.